All right, joining me now here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my friend Kenzo Shibata. Kenzo is the new media coordinator for the Chicago Teachers Union Local 1, which you can find at ctunet.com. You can also find Kenzo on Twitter at Kenzo Shibata. Kenzo, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thank you for having me on again, Matt. Appreciate it.
All right, so Kenzo, honestly, we haven't really covered a whole lot on the Chicago Teachers Union since the big strike, but there is a lot going on in Chicago. So why don't you just give us an update on the ongoing fight, specifically when it comes to school closings?
Well, right now we're in this position where there's 129 schools on this master list of school closings, and this was whittled down from just a few months ago. Initially, there was a law passed that actually required the board to give ample notification to which schools would be closed to allow time for communities to organize just to basically save their schools. But they were able, the Board of Ed was able to go down to our state capitol and change things, make an exception for themselves, so they don't actually have to announce until March 31st. And so far, since the beginning of 2013, the board has kind of been, dangling the schools over fire by holding these community hearings, which actually are being underwritten by the Walton Family Foundation, who's they have a lot of stake actually in here, a lot of skin in the game. They actually provided seed money for some charter schools next year that are opening. Which is kind of interesting that we're closing schools and the board is saying these schools are underutilized, and then they're also opening charter schools, which are publicly funded, privately run schools.
By Walmart, actually, as well,
yeah.
Which is like some seed money from Walmart, but it's actually publicly funded. After the seed money initially, it's all going to be public funding that keeps it going.
Yeah, and actually right now the charter school lobby in Illinois is trying to fix it so they get 100% of the funding that the public schools get. Now, one of the selling points of charter schools initially was the fact that you can fund them less, and then they get all these donations from these philanthropists, which make them cheaper than regular public schools. And right now, maybe people don't have the money to throw into it like they used to, but they're going for full funding now. So there really is no benefit at all for these charter schools. But the board has made it very clear that they're closing schools. They keep repeating that there's no connection between the two, but it's really impossible to see. It's really impossible to make that distinction. Like, they're literally closing schools. Kids are going to be shifted around, and charter schools are popping up. And one thing we know about the charter schools is they don't enroll students with special needs. They don't enroll students who are English language learners. So it creates another tier of education in the city, which we don't need. We need to have fully funded public education for all students.
Yeah, and also you also on your blog also report that primarily the schools that are being closed are mostly in minority areas, which I know people are shocked to hear that, but that really is where these closings are actually happening.
Actually, 9 out of 10 schools on the list are in black neighborhoods. And,
Wow.
Recently, Rahm Emanuel stated that he blames parents for some of the failings of schools. He must have been actually looking at the polls, which said, the teachers are extremely popular with the public. The teachers union actually, it was shown during the strike, people were blaming Rahm for the teacher strike, rightfully so. And we're basically on our side. So he must have actually started reading these polls. So instead of attacking the teachers in his messaging, he said that the real problem is parents who, as he said, can't be parents, and they have too many kids and literally from a broken home. Those were his quotes. And to me, this sounds very much like the Atwater style coded language. It's like the Reagan welfare queen construct that they try to put in your head. It's racist language. And, how do you sell racist policies unless you're using sort of racist language without actually using the language itself? So,
all right, so I'm going to say this right off the bat, Kenzo. This is not something that's that. I got to say, I am a huge fan of the Chicago Teachers Union, and I got to say, I am a huge fan of the fact of the way you guys are actually going about this, because so many unions across the country, when it's a Democrat who's trying to destroy them, just play nice and say, "Oh no, we can't possibly attack a Democrat who's trying to destroy this. We have to be nice." But no, it is. You're absolutely positively correct. What Rahm Emanuel is doing is absolutely racist. Karen Lewis, your head, had a quote recently talking about at a panel where she said, "Closing schools is a real estate plan. It's a land grab. It's gentrification." You're talking, bringing literally into what this is, which a lot of this is like the shock doctrine that is actually happening in Chicago, Illinois right now.
And people often bristle when you use the word racist, because a lot of like the middle tier kind of bureaucrat types and people who work for nonprofits, they are not necessarily themselves bigoted. So no one wants to be called racist, but the policies themselves have a disparate impact upon black and brown people. So they, just kind of keeping the status quo of these school closings and opening these segregated charter schools, they are racist policies, and it's perpetuating racism by not doing anything about them. So the only way we can really fight this racism is to actually change the way we do things, equitably fund schools, and stop just kind of handing them over to privatizers.
Absolutely. I also saw on the Chicago Teachers Union website, which is CTU.net, and I'm talking to my friend Kenzo Shibata, that you guys are actually planning for and have held trainings for nonviolent civil disobedience for the upcoming school closing fights. Tell us all about that.
Well, the school closing, it's become very apparent that the Board of Education and the people who are funding the billionaire philanthropists, they're very ideological on this. They want to privatize public education. They're kind of shirking their own responsibility for running these schools. And they want to do it. They're so intent on doing this that they're sparing no expense. They're throwing money into it. They're making decisions that are actually very bad for schools and not even necessarily bad for themselves politically to a certain extent. So, at that point, what do you do? Where do you have your leverage? And we have to kind of look to the lessons we learned in, during the civil rights era. This is a civil rights issue. Arnie Duncan likes to say that education is the civil rights issue of our lifetime, and he's right. He's just on the wrong side of history on that. So that's where we have to go. That's kind of where they pushed us.
And so people are preparing to actually do more than just march. They're actually and more than just calling their local politicians. They're planning to do to escalate this when the closings actually start to happen. Absolutely.
People are very protective of their schools. Schools are the hubs of communities. They're really one of the only institutions within communities where everyone has some sort of stake in it, even if your kids don't go there. Your neighbors go there. Your relatives go there. And they really could be ways of uniting the community. And by privatizing them, they're really removing the community from these schools.